Welcome to the AI plus UX Lunch and Learn by Strat. This is a series we've been running every Friday at noon Eastern Time. Today, my guest is Greg Nudelman, who is Distinguished Designer at Sumo Logic. Greg is an expert in the topic of the UX of AI. He has 5 books and a new one coming out this spring called The UX of AI. Greg has 24 patents, and he's giving workshops around the world on this same topic of the UX of AI. And he's going to be a cornerstone at the AI Bootcamp for UX teams that we're running in San Francisco on May 13th through 15th. Hi, Greg. Welcome to the Stratosphere.
Hello, and great to be here. Thank you, Paul.
So
Yeah,
I want to talk with you about a bunch of stuff that's happening in the world of UX and AI. But first, can you just give the people who joined us an introduction to yourself?
sure thing. I'm I guess I've run teams for a while and have been an IC in the space. I'm super excited about this new chapter that UX is going through. It it's We have to react to this new technology, and I find it amazing and exciting. And so I started UX4AI.com a couple of years ago, and we got about 100 articles there on AI. And I write with Daria, who is my kind of co-pilot and kindly edits all the craziness that I put out. So only the best stuff makes it out into the world. And we have this book coming out, which I'm super excited about. So UX4AI, and that's from Wiley, and that's available for pre-order already. It's coming in April. So, that's me. I just can't get enough of this stuff, and I hope you all are in the same boat. And if not, I hope you will be by the time we're done here at lunch. Get
Yeah,
you
I'm
all
gonna
excited about it.
I'm gonna talk with Greg for about 30 minutes. I'm going to ask him some questions that I've prepared, and then I'm going to open it up for questions to you guys. So be thinking ahead of time about what questions you'd like to ask. Feel free to put them in chat if you'd like. I am severely ADD, so I can't both talk to Greg and look at chat. But at some point in the middle of our conversation, I'm going to check chat and see if there are questions for Greg there. But Greg, you mentioned UX and the field of UX, and it's something I'm very concerned about as well, that as a community, it feels like a community to me. I've enjoyed being in it from the very beginning, back in the 90s. Um, how do you see, in large terms, how do you see what UX is facing right now in with respect to AI?
Yeah, I think there's kind of a three different directions that I'm seeing people are taking. And the direction number one is there's folks like myself that are excited about this opportunity. They see the value. They want to build products in the new way, which is kind of I call it AI first. I know this is a triggering thing for some folks, but like really a brand new thinking, just like we had mobile first thinking, and now we have like AI first thinking and approach. And and by the way, as I say in the book, all of the techniques you have known and learned, they just need a little tweak, but they're still going to work just fine for AI. Anyway, so that's like number one direction that folks are taking. And those people, I think, are going to be just fine. In fact, there's not enough of us, so I'm hoping we can make more with this seminar here. The other, yes, the other part, the other folks are just kind of checked out. They're so apathetic. There's just like too many hits all at once, too much change, and people just check out and they're just stepping off the train. And there's no shame in that. I think it's great. We just had somebody who left and they just decided to start a Pilates studio, for example. So that is like fantastic. I super applaud that. If your heart's not in it, this is definitely a great time to step away and pursue your other passions. If you always felt that way. And then there is the third cohort, which are just want to keep things exactly the same as they were. They just want AI for their tooling. In other words, they want Figma to tell them what AI is supposed to be, and they're using, they're primarily focused on how do I use AI to help me do exact same thing that I've been doing for 10 years. And that is unfortunately not going to work at all. Like that is really people are doing that, but I think it's a very, very unfortunate direction that I think is going to really, really suffer. Those folks really need to retool as a matter of urgency, and we need to stop relying on our tools like Figma to deliver us from evil and to tell us exactly how to do this. We need to take initiative as a matter of absolute urgency because there's so much happening, and we need to be a part of it. We cannot wait. So those are kind of the three main directions, and there is a huge turmoil in the industry. I mean, a lot of folks are leaving or getting laid off, or seeing their role kind of evolve and change. And not everyone is welcoming that movement of their cheese with open arms. And that's why we're here. That's why we actually have the boot camp coming up in San Francisco that I'm sure you're going to talk about. That really to try to reskill and upskill folks and give them the tools that they need, the practical ways to go about designing these new systems, specifically agentic systems, specifically LLM driven systems, copilots, etc. Right? We got all that lined up. We got some of the absolute top folks in the UX and product industry driving this, and I'm really hoping you guys check it out and take advantage of that. Those of you who are local to the Bay Area or want to visit us, well, we don't bite. So please come on over.
Yeah, no, agreed. Good analysis there. I think that some people are wondering though, they want to upskill, but it's a little confusing because there's such a very large low-hanging fruit of just the little text field and just put it in and the API works. And so you can satisfy some stakeholders just by slapping that little input field into whatever product you have. But I think that's kind of short-sighted.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one great example of that is Microsoft. They're basically through their partnership with OpenAI, their ChatGPT, the company, they're basically slapping that everywhere. And it's interesting because initially they just did exactly that, and then very quickly they found that people weren't really getting the value out of it. So they started morphing and adjusting to different use cases. And there was an excellent seminar yesterday from Rosenfeld Media that talked about that, like just the great variety of different things, like how local is this copilot going to be? How aware is it of global questions? Can you ask global questions or just stuff on the page? How big of a space are you occupying? How aware is it of the context of the system that's coming in? How much does it know that's like specialized knowledge, and how much RAG have you done with that particular thing, like retrieval augmented um, um, response, right? So those are the things that we need to get involved in, because use cases are our bread and butter. We understand that better than everyone. We need to get upskilled on AI to understand the values and the damage of both true positive, false positive. Really understand that confusion matrix and the convert into value matrix of like real human values, and then use that to drive business decisions, because that is what's missing today. So the technology is there in place. It's wonderful, but it's that human connection that is missing, and that is exactly what we specialize in, and that is something we can absolutely add to the conversation. So it's really a matter of urgency, because I think, frankly, AI is just too important to be left just to data scientists. We need to bring balance to the force as UXers, and we need to come and get involved. And there are many people that just feel disempowered and somehow overwhelmed with everything. And so you're part of what I like to do, and I strive to do with UX4AI.com, and also through this AI bootcamp that we have coming up, is really just bring that clarity, bring that peace of mind, empower you to really be part of this conversation, because I strongly believe we cannot succeed as species without that humanity and human peace, which I'm sure, Paul, you wrote the Humanifesto, so that is something that's near and dear to your heart as well.
Yeah, I mean, I look to Leonardo da Vinci 500 years ago, who just looked at, here's what there is, here's what I can know how to do. Now, how do I put those things together? And that's what I would like to see people do with the boot camp, and with your book and with these other pieces, is to engage that curiosity and engage that creativity, because there's so much consumption. There's so much good content everywhere that it's easier to watch somebody else playing a musical instrument than to play it yourself, and to write a poem or just read something, that's somewhere else. And I hope that that our community, the one that brings the human lens to innovation, that we can get in our own spaces and start creating. But to do that, it's not just a question of creating an agent, right? There's more thinking that goes into it than that.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the real danger, is we're doing this Deus Ex Machina without really God from the machine, without really understanding this. We're barely out of one of my favorite quotes is we got um Paleolithic emotions, and we have godlike technology, and it's really coming to a point right now, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Not only that, like, there's a massive investment from the latest administration of $500 billion, that this is to give you one perspective. The original Manhattan Project, the atomic bomb, was only about $63 billion to make that born. So the adjusted for inflation, and so we're basically about eight times what they've spent on the atomic bomb. We're just investing into AI, and that is for one and one reason only. I'm convinced, is to create AGI, and that is AGI that is not just simply there for us to ask it questions. What is the meaning of life, and why are we here, and all those wonderful cosmic things that we all want to know, but to really weaponize it, and weaponize it quite aggressively. Uh, Whatever your politics, I think it's difficult to picture this current political climate not doing that. Um, and that means, who is going to put sort of guardrails around this technology?
Right.
It's going to be up to us. It's going to be up to UX people coming in, talking about ethics, talking about humanity, talking about the planet, talking about the impact of this new tech. And that means we need to empower ourselves to be part of this conversation as a matter of urgency. It is like the most important thing for 2025. Like, make that your goal. If that's not your goal and you still want to stay on the train, make that the goal, to empower yourself to be part of the conversation. Whatever it is you do, take free courses if you can, take paid courses. There's lots of content out there. A lot of it's very confusing. We try to organize it for you through these events, and I hope you take advantage of that, because we need you.
Yeah, we do. We do. And I want to go back to something you mentioned a little earlier, and that is kind of some different approaches that our community, the UX community, is taking towards AI. And one was kind of same old, but just let me do it faster with AI and maybe fewer team members. And then the other is to learn about the specifics. I don't feel like the user experience professional role designation is sufficient. Um, I I feel like the boot camp is the first step towards a new kind of role, and you already have that role, and the people that are speaking at the boot camp already have that role. It's just not called that yet. I'm calling it the AI experience architect, but it's a person that's bringing the human lens. They understand psychology, they understand interaction, they understand technology and where we're at, but they also understand that what's well-being, what does that look like? What does a good experience look like? And I don't think anybody else can bring that to the table like we can, but we can't bring it there if we don't understand the mechanics of if we don't understand the materials. You can't be Frank Lloyd Wright and build, flowing water. Even he couldn't build it, right? But still, you can't do that if you don't know what the materials are and you don't know how they work.
Exactly, exactly. There is a certain minimum. One of my favorite quotes is from Sheckley, who said, "In order to ask the right question, you need to know part of the answer," and that is what we need. Just maybe it's a very minimal part of the answer, but that answer it needs to be there. But I really want to emphasize that those techniques you already use, contextual analysis, rapid iterative testing and evaluation, collaborative brainstorming, ability to balance various opposing viewpoints of the room and come out with a couple of different designs that that may address various aspects, being able to talk about roles and personas. All of those things are super valuable. Like they're just like solid gold for this. You need to get involved and apply them. There are minor tweaks you need to do to those to really make them shine in this new day and age. But those very same skills, I wouldn't call them soft skills because they're, that's kind of diminishes the value. I would call them core skills. They're really humanizing the technology, being the ombudsman of innovation, if you will, and really advocate both for what's the best thing that technology can bring and what is the best thing that the human can build, and then just kind of making it a augmented intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. It's really humans working with the machines, each one doing the best that they can bring to the table. Together, it really becomes a superhero-like enablement for your users. So why wouldn't you want to take advantage of that and be part of that empowerment?
I think part of the issue is the vocabulary. I was in a meeting in San Francisco as I was getting ready for the boot camp and finding the venue for that, Digital Jungle, which is amazing venue. But I was in the AI kind of fan club meeting, just seeing what it was about, and I didn't understand a word, and I thought it was comical because literally I'm reading about this stuff all the time, but it was so deep in the weeds of Python and what was going on. So I'm wondering how many people are intimidated by the wall of data science that says you have to kind of
Mhm.
understand everything before you can say anything. And I just don't think that's the case. I think we can push back with some understanding and say, yeah, but what if we did this to improve the experience? Is there a way to do that? But if you don't know enough to ask the question, then you're not able to ask the question. And it just, we're out of the loop.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is kind of very disempowering for a lot of folks, and I've noticed that too. And I think that leads to apathy, and that's the dark side, right? So that's where the kind of just become pretty fires of
Right. Or
text
ease of
boxes.
use. Ease of use, I think
Um,
we can have usability,
yeah,
right?
and I think it's okay to ask what I would call dumb questions, right? Like to give you one example, we had a very clever I should the company shall remain nameless. So we had a very clever CEO who said, "Look, I went to all the best schools. I know best." Um, and I said, you did, but did your customers? And it's all about like don't make statements, I would say. Like when you're faced with that, ask questions. So what does this do for users? Or what would the user interaction be like? What would they get if they asked X? If you ask questions, it's a lot less intimidating because it just shows you have an open mind and you actually want to know. I think that's another one of my favorite South by Southwest presentations have been by Tim Ferriss, who said, if you want to talk to folks, you just come up and you listen politely. And then you pick one thing that they talked about that they seem passionate about, and you ask a question about it. And so it can be very similar type of thing with data science. Now, all joking aside, we have an exercise that we like to do as part of the workshop, and it's also described in the book. And of course, we will be doing that exercise as part of the AI bootcamp. It's called a digital twin modeling. So What it involves is basically making a model of your system and how it interacts with the world, and then listing the inputs on the left and the outputs on the right and the assumptions on the bottom. So it's a very, very simple exercise, but it's deceptively simplistic. It's actually considerably more sophisticated because it's asking all the right questions about where's the data coming from? Is there bias in the data? What are we really trying to predict? Because you can, using a simple combination of maybe a smartwatch, a simple quote unquote, take your phone and your smartwatch, and you can get everything about that person, literally about their health, about their sleeping habits, about their finances, every single thing that is digital about that person you can get. So you can model anything, literally. You can model how long they'll live. You can model if how likely they are to go into an old person's home, or what their insurance rate should be, or what their health problems will be. You can check their gait and see how their musculoskeletal structure is, and how often do they pull it out, and how quickly, and then look at their anxiety level and all the other stuff that you can literally model everything about the person, but should you? So that's the kind of the question, right? So in a lot of these conversations, it's kind of the data scientists going, well, we can do this, we can do this, we can da, right? And then you're kind of like, okay, well, where does it end, right? And then with agents, it's even more complicated and dangerous, because these things are not they're not programmed, they're trained. And so there's very difficult to predict what exactly they'll do. And that's part of the value, but it's also part of the challenge, because you don't know exactly how much money they'll spend doing it, whatever it is they're doing, and how long they'll take, and how do we stop it? One of the things that continues to comes to mind. By the way, I'll have an article on agents coming out today, later on. So if you want to get that, sign up on LinkedIn. I have a I have a whatchamacallit, newsletter. I have a newsletter on LinkedIn, and I have a UX for AI. Thank you. I have a UX for AI .com. If you want to sign up for membership there to get these as they come out. So one thing about agents is there's very little, or in terms of stop buttons. All the UIs that we're looking at, there's no stop. And one of the things, if you look at how they operate, it's actually very interesting. It's a little bit like, if you ever seen Mickey Mouse doing the Wizard's Apprentice in the Fantasia, right? He kind of gets this wizard's hat, and he says, "Oh, I don't want to sweep the floor myself. I'm just gonna enchant these brooms to do this, right?" And he enchants the brooms to carry the water and to sweep the room, and off they go. And then he falls asleep, and next thing he knows is all the entire thing is flooded. Yeah, it's a big mess, and the entire thing is flooded, and he can't figure out what to do with them. So he tries to chop them into pieces, and then just makes more of them, and he just can't stop the process until the master shows up, and he takes this hat back. So we need to be very cognizant of what the heck that we're doing with this, because over and over again we hearing these warnings about agents, but very little is landing in the industry, because these guys are almost like Jurassic Park, right? They get so excited. They're like, we can make dinosaurs, and nobody asked, should we make dinosaurs? Is it a good idea? Right. So who's going to be asking that question? You guys.
Right.
Every one of you needs to be asking that question. Is this a good idea? How do we stop that? Those broomsticks that are carrying the water, right? Like we need to have a stop button or a pause button at the very least. These things are new, and it's a new material, as Paul, as you said, right? Like, it's a new material we're playing with. We need to understand the capabilities and the dangers of what it is we're doing.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, let me take you in a little bit different direction. We've sort of been talking top down, what's happening to our industry, what should people be looking out for, how can they upskill to take advantage of your materials, our materials, et cetera. But let's look at a bottom-up perspective. But one thing about Strat speakers is I try to find people that are actually doing the work. And Greg, you're somebody that's actually doing this kind of work as well as talking about it. Um, Imagine a day sometime in the last month when you did lots of UX for AI kind of stuff. Um, Bottom up, what tools are you looking at? How did the day go? What roles did you interface with? Tell us a story about the UX of AI, but from the bottom up, get your hands dirty perspective. What was involved?
I could tell you, but I'll have to kill you. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually very, very exciting for the folks that are in the mix and are moving toward that AI experience architect role that Paul you described. I think it's super interesting. So one of the things that I teach folks how to do through my workshops and through this AI bootcamp that we have coming up is how to do rapid iterative testing and evaluation in three different, like we used to just do this on just the design itself, right? Because we thought, well, anything we design can just be basically created. We've been conditioned over the past decade, like we just leave it to the developers. And so often I get this, like, just leave it to the adults in the room. Just worry about UX. Don't worry about AI, right? Like all that kind of stuff. I still hear that, which always cracks me up because that is utter complete bullshit. Yeah, we need to understand what is happening. So a lot of my day is really understanding what is the model going to give you. And to do this, I use simple tools like ChatGPT, like Claude, um, Gemini, whatever. I use Python notebooks. I make small models, small little throwaway models of be the LLMs that are specifically trained to do a certain response. And then they can just be in the original UI, right? You don't need to actually build any UI for it because the model is iterating. And then also the data is iterating because you need to understand where the data is coming from, what sort of data am I grabbing? Do I have permission for it? Are the users okay with us using this data, right? All of that stuff. And then, of course, there's the UI. And yes, UI, I use Figma, I use sketches, I do tons and tons and tons of sketches. I wish I could show you, but I can't, like I said. But I got literally a whole stack of paper that's got designs in it, right? Like I use a document camera literally all the time. So I do that for every Zoom session. And you try to, you have basically a couple of sketches and a simple idea for a model, and even just using ChatGPT or Claude out of the box. And you just start talking to customers. You say, okay, how do you do this today? And show me the last 2, 3 times you had to do X. Walk me through what you're doing now. Okay, great. What if we had a system that could deliver Y? To you. Okay, great. Let me show you what that might look like, and I might even sketch it or something with them live, right? Let's co-create. What would you really want it to do? Would you want it to give you the actual steps, or would you want it to just do the thing for you, like an agent, or would you want it to do something very specific and narrow? And of course, the narrower the slice, the tastier the salami. Sorry, vegetarians, but it's the truth, right? So the smaller the use case, the more narrow the slice, the more likely you are to succeed. If you're just trying to build a God box that does everything, it's going to fail, guaranteed. Until we have AGI, right? And then we'll see what happens. Yeah,
Okay.
next 4 years are going to be fun. All right, so the bottom line is it's a continuous iteration. So I show them this thing, and then we say, okay, what would you ask it? Okay, now that you have the UI, you've seen the UI, you're doing the task, you have the UI. What would you want to do with this thing? Let's go ahead and type it in. So if it's some sort of Copilot thing, that, by the way, we launched at Sumo, and I highly recommend you check it out. Even as a demo, it's really, really cool. It's actually running in GA, and we're super proud of it because one of the things it does is autocomplete, for example. So there's literally very, very few copilots out there. In fact, I can't think of a single one that does autocomplete. Um, and that is super valuable because it shows awareness of the data. And then that took us a really long time to implement. That is huge. But that is again one example of things you can bring as a UXer to creation of these. You don't have to just copy blindly. You can bring existing patterns and your existing knowledge and augment the patterns that you're seeing from ChatGPT and Claude and Microsoft and Google, et cetera, and Amazon. So to go back to the process, once you ask them, you type it into your model and you see what the model returns. And then, oftentimes it would be a really huge block of text and, all the different headings and, I considered this and I considered that. And here's what the thing is. And so when the user sees that, they can then change their query, or they can go, well, what I really wanted to see was this very succinct answer to my question. Instead, it gave me, 5 paragraphs. And then maybe I want to see a table of data that shows X. So then you have your data, right? So then you can iterate because you now learn something from that customer. So next customer, because you're doing right, rapid iterative testing and evaluation, then the next customer gets the updated UI and they get the updated model because it's as simple as you actually telling the LLM what you want the output to be. And then using some examples, again, look up RAG. It's a very accessible technique, and it's just super. It's not. There's no expense, right? If you already have this thing running, just don't put any real data in there. Don't put any customer data in there because there's no RBAC. There's no security whatsoever in these things, right? Whatever you put in there becomes fodder for the next thing. It's just sucking up all the data. It's eating the world. So just be careful what you're putting in there. But any kind of like test data, any kind of like data, it can actually generate data for you, which is really cool. So it can say, well, what's a reasonable amount of, what's a reasonable data? Give me a range of 10 IPs um, from the United States. It will do that, right? It's smart enough to give you sample data. So all the stuff that you used to have to go back and forth between the PM and the engineer and do all that kind of stuff, you can kind of do yourself. So it's very, very empowering if you are using those tools. But again, what's cool is you actually have 3 different things that you're researching at the same time. You're researching the UI, you're researching the model, and you're researching the data. And it's really going to take all 3 things being iterated on to really come up with the answer. And I have a lot of slides and a lot of examples, and then in the boot camp and the workshops, we actually get to try this for real, and we get to actually do a few iterations of this design, and you guys see how empowering the process really is, and how much it moves the ball forward in your own work, and how you
Great
can use it.
explanation. That's outstanding. I'm going to ask a couple more questions, and I'm going to open it up for questions in the chat. So I see somebody asked, are we going to have a recording? Yes. So everything
Is that the only question you got? Come on,
with the
you can do
recording.
better.
But
You're UXers. Your questions are your superpower. Let's go.
I haven't read through. I just saw that one on my screen. Like I said, I'm like squirrel, just saw it there. But I do want to ask you about your relationships with the data scientists and engineers, because back in the day, we just threw the stuff over the wall, I think, like you were saying.
Mhm.
They could just make it, or they could write an agile manifesto saying why they couldn't make it. But still, the idea was basically, we're over here doing the blueprint. Now you build the building, and it
Mhm.
doesn't work like that anymore, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's critical that we get involved, and it's about human relationships, right? Like you know, learn who these people are, take them to lunch, pick up the tab, right? Like make sure make sure it's a good restaurant. It's I'm serious, right? Like it's it's important to have shared experiences with your team and really understand where they're coming from and vice versa. And just kind of really think of service leadership, right? What do they need? Like ask them what do they need from you, or what do they need in general? Do they need somebody to take notes? Well, now we got the of course the Zoom companion doing that, but you know, can you sketch it live while they're giving ideas? Can you use that same document camera and same concept and go, are you talking about X? Like, and just sketch it out. Can you do that? Um, can you do that live and help everybody come to the same kind of understanding? Great, do it, right? Like, what can you do to help them out? Because their job is really, really, really difficult. I mean, it is really, really hard. They think our job is hard. Their job is probably 10 times more complex because they have to actually implement everything that we're overwhelmed by. They actually have to be able to swim with the sharks today. So, as Einstein said, whatever your difficulties in mathematics, I can assure you mine are greater. So just have compassion for these guys. They're under tremendous pressure and to deliver and in incredible heavy deadlines and just have some faith and help them out. And again, the smaller the slice you can give them, the better, because if you can shave off even a 10% off of a data set or make it a thinner slice of what the output should be, it is going to help them do their job. So the sooner you can do that in the project, the faster you can do it, the more actionable intelligence you can bring from your customers' conversations. It is solid gold for these folks, and they may look like they don't care and they're in the weeds because they have to be, right? If you ever coded, if you ever done any data science at all, you know it requires total complete concentration. So, that's kind of my advice is it's no longer three in a box. It used to be, UX, PM and developer. Well, now it's four in the box because that data scientist is a critical component. So invite them to these things and also but value their time, right? Don't spend an hour when you can spend 30 minutes. Don't book the meeting. If they're located in India, be aware of the time difference. Get up at 6 a.m. or get up at 7 a.m. if you're in Pacific time, and make sure they have time for dinner, right? Like don't don't abuse your U.S. privileges, right? Like they're your compatriots. You win or lose together. This is a group effort. None of us can deliver this thing alone. It's going to take a village to build these products because again, to train them, right, to grow them. Think of it as like a baby you grow. Like this is what these products are like. And by the way, once they're released, it's just a starting point. It used to be like, oh, we threw this over. This is like this kind of like we threw it over. They built it, QA tested it, the sales sold it. We're done, right? Well, guess what? This is the beginning now. It's the starting gun for your development because every single thing you're taking in, everything that customers are typing in and interacting with this thing, it should be learning. It should be improving. You should be already thinking something that's very tactical and also 2 years ahead. And again, in the bootcamp, we teach you exactly how to do that, how to build vision prototypes, how to get into these leadership roles where you're consulted specifically on where the vision is going and how to add value with that. And all that is gonna be really, really valuable next year, 4, 5, 10 years. It's gonna be huge.
Agreed. We do have Dave Brown of Amazon teaching a section on how to work with data scientists. Like what kind of artifacts should you produce? How do you interact with them? Because I think that's an area of some trepidation for some people. And in fact, when you speak another language and you want to let somebody else know that you speak that language, you use some kind of phrase that only people that really speak that kind of language, like in German, might say something like Heizmal, or just something that lets them know, like, hey, I speak, actual real German. When you're talking to data scientists, before I look in the chat for questions, how can you indicate that you understand something about what you are talking about when you're talking to the data scientist? What's an indication of that?
Well, I think the best indication is a question, right? If you can come up with a good question that specifically takes into account data science and something about the product, keeping it focused on the use case, I think that's the best. I don't think you really need to be super kind of in the weeds. Um, Unless you are speaking the language, then all bets are off. I think just trying out a few of these techniques yourself. For example, RAG is very simple to try, and you should already be using that. ChatGPT just came out with everything is free, like they're completely open, so you should have no excuse whatsoever. You should be interacting with this thing every day, multiple times a day. You should be testing the limits, what it can do, what it cannot do. Um, it's a fascinating technology. It is really, really a step function change from where we used to be. It's going to be bigger than the internet. It already is, I would say. It is super exciting, but it's also brand new. And so I wouldn't worry about learning every single thing about everything, but trying it out will give you that zeitgeist, feel for that zeitgeist, to use another German word for that in there, right? Like to really get it, and be able, not on equal footing, but at least be able to ask the right question. Again, knowing part of the answer will enable you to ask the right question.
Okay, let me look through some of this chat stuff. Okay, Sanders said, I just learned a lot of stuff about agents by playing with Crew AI,
Yes.
and highly recommend that.
Excellent. There you go. See, so use that. You heard that, guys, right? Like it's and gals. These things are very accessible. They will write the code for you. Just ask them for the code. They'll write the code for you. They'll run the code. Like literally, Claude will create a little play app for you if you want. Like it will say, like, write me an app, and if it can't run it, it will debug it. It's pretty freaky. It's pretty amazing. It is like really next level. It will literally write the thing for you if you want. You can say, write me an agent to do blah blah blah, and let's test it. It will totally do that. It is pretty cool.
Cool. Maria says, I hope you will organize online events for the rest of us living overseas. Yes, the bootcamp is just the first step. We're creating this program for certification of the AI experience architect, and the bootcamp that Greg is featured in San Francisco. That's just the first step, but the rest of it's going to be online courses that people are going to be able to take. Question from LinkedIn Live. Hello, I'm Marcus from Finland. Software development is experiencing a big shift, perhaps even more significant change than UX does. What are your thoughts about how dev and UX workflows change in terms of co-creating stuff?
Wow. Yeah, I think it's again that instead of like just us iterating on the UI and then expecting you guys to build it, it's much more collaborative because that four in a box approach, and then that iteration on three different things, that the UI, the AI model, and the data. And then it doesn't all need to be kind of combined. You can just kind of um, ask the users to suspect, disbelieve, and say, imagine this is the answer that's printed in this UI. It's really not that difficult for normal humans to imagine that. Um, so this is where collaboration really shines. And I'd say don't be afraid to come to these sessions, and your UXer should already be running this if they're listening to us. And so just ask to be invited, and be part of that. You don't need to ask a lot of questions. You just be a fly on the wall, and then come to lunch, come to fika if you're in Finland. Um, have have yourself a fika together and strategize and see what you can do together. I think that this is the superpower behind humans, honestly, is us working together. That this is what separated us from Neanderthals. We if you if you're a fan if you're a fan of Sapiens
One thing
book,
that separated us, yeah.
one thing that separated us, yes. Um, well, yeah, while they were individually stronger and bigger and so on, like we could collaborate and we could collaborate around an idea rather than collaborate around something physical. So, animals cannot have this abstract thinking. They understand a lion is over there at the same at like right now. Um, but to imagine the lion will be there in, an hour, that is very, very difficult for animals to do, and that was hard for Neanderthals. But humans can do that. They can say, here's an idea, here's a sketch, and here's what might happen if we work together. And so that's our superpower. That's something we do. We do symphony, we do collaboration, we do joy, we do creativity so much better than machines. And this is where we need to really focus on that. If we just sit down and code by ourselves in front of the computer, that's very largely becoming an AI thing. Same with designs, right? Like it's a matter of I'm actually surprised we don't have that yet. But to go straight from maybe a sketch on paper or a simple prompt using the components that are in React directly to UI that is written in React, right? So directly to code, bypassing Figma, bypassing any of that stuff. So we don't need any of these high def things, right? Like AI can just take care of it. Not only that, it can give you 10 different options for that wireframe, basically for free, right? So that whole like I'm gonna go away and like do this thing is kind of done. So you need to collaborate and you need to feel human, right? And you need to channel that humanity into creativity and new products. So collaboration is the answer, really.
All right, well, let me go to JS, who has a three-part question. Let's see which of these parts you would like to answer. How do we evaluate AI-generated answers? How much LLM knowledge do we need to know as a UX designer? And how to approach AI product design? So those are your three choices.
Okay. So let me tackle one at a time. So the first one was how do we evaluate answers? So AI is a super bullshit generator, right? If you ask what would make a snake a great pet, it will tell you 10 answers. If you say what would make a snake a terrible pet, it will give you 10 answers. So and they will elaborate in each one and tell you a full story about every one of those, right? It's it will, yeah, Chris Nossel came up with this bullshit generator moniker, and I absolutely love it. He actually has a perspective in the book. So definitely check that out. I love it. It's literally what it is. So yes, it's gonna be bullshit. Sometimes it's correct bullshit, sometimes it's not, but in either case, it's gonna be kind of pulled out of this morass of stuff it learned. So you absolutely want to evaluate it for for both the accuracy and completeness and so on. We have something called a value matrix, which is exercise that we teach as part of the AI bootcamp, where you look at the confusion matrix very quickly. You have, true positive, true negative, false positive, false negative, right? So each of these outcomes, and then you attach an actual value to it. You can say, well, if this answer is correct about a pet, for example, let's just take a snake as a pet. If the answer, like, let's say I ask a rattlesnake, should I get a rattlesnake as a pet? So if the if the answer is correct, and it's a terrible idea, don't do this, right? That would be the correct answer. Uh, what is the positive outcome? Well, the person doesn't get the snake as a pet. They don't get bitten, etc. Right? If it gets it wrong, however, and it says, yeah, the rattlesnakes make fantastic pets. You can pet them, like, let them curl up on your cheek, whatever. And then the person dies, right? That is a very bad negative outcome. So that let's just attach a simple value to a human life. What would it be if you talk If you talk to a place like Boeing or whatever, it's about $1 million per human dead in the MCAS incident. So that this is when they had AI actually crash a couple of 737 Maxes. So it's about $1 million. So they killed about 397 people. So they paid out about $400 million. So let's just say $1 million is the negative outcome of this. So you can see that, maybe you made $1 on a positive answer. So you need to be very, very accurate with that answer about rattlesnakes, because you have to make 1,000,001 correct answers for each negative answer. You get what I'm saying? Like that is exactly the kind of evaluation you need to be doing as a UXer. And you need to understand that exercise very intimately in order to be able to evaluate it. So the good news is we practice this for real life use cases in the boot camp, and the exercise also in the book for you to try. So definitely I would say it's essential to understand the real world value and the real world cost of each of these outcomes that the AI is going to deliver. So spot on. What were the other ones, or did we get other questions?
Yeah, JS had a couple more questions there. As a time check, we have 8 minutes left before we're going to end. So a couple of more questions. How much LLM knowledge do we need as a UX designer? And then how to approach AI product design? I guess.
Well, wow, I would say how to approach it, take the boot camp, pick up the book. I think that's the best. Like you really want to upskill. As far as LLM knowledge, I would say the more the better. I would say if you use it, 2-3 times a day, for basic tasks. You can get it on your phone, by the way, and I think now it's free on your phone. So, what excuse do you have to not use it?
Okay, I have some more questions here. So Kristen asks, any advice on making sure your research produces AI product ideas that are doable with current AI capabilities?
That's a really fantastic question, Kristen. Yes, this is exactly what the whole thing is about, really. That's the whole AI bootcamp is about that, and the book is about that as well. So this is exactly what we give these practical tools to figure that out. And part of it is evaluating use cases. That is the number one reason why these things fail. By the way, 85% of these initiatives absolutely go to pot. So that's according to Gardner and Forbes. I didn't come up with that number. So only 15% succeed. How do you make sure you're part of this 15%? Well, you take the boot camp. But that's the long answer. But the short answer is you model every one of these use cases as a storyboard, and then you test it with customers. You can test the storyboard with customers. You can test it with you can show it to your data scientists. You can first you share it with your stakeholders. You say, does that make sense? Is this something that we can actually do? But don't forget, it's not just the AI, it's the data as well. So where are we getting the data? That's where that second exercise comes in, the digital twin, where you figure out what you're trying to, what kind of sources of data do you have? What assumptions are you making? And then what are you trying to predict? Do they match, right? Like, and having that understanding and having that exercise with your team is what is going to give you that fuel. And maybe it's not the use case. Very often it's the use case that the data scientists want to answer, but it's not the use case that the users want to answer. Let me give you just one example. I was part of this a smart irrigation company. I was doing consulting for them. And their idea was that they're going to go to these third generation farmers, and they're going to tell them that their crops are sufficiently watered. And so the farmers were just like flabbergasted. This is like silly. Like, what do you mean? Like, I go out there and I do a heel test. I drive the heel of my boot into the ground, and if I see an impression, then it's sufficiently watered. Like, I don't need all this fancy stuff to tell me this. So then we turned this around and we said, okay, what does keep you up at night? Well, they said, oh, plenty. I have global warming, I have climate change, I have stringent regulations on water use. I have we're all pulling water from the same aquifer. Believe me, these guys, when it comes to global warming and climate change, they understand, they get it. They get it. That California is turning into a desert. And they're absolutely they're getting this. There's no confusion for these guys. They can see this happening. So that is what they needed help with. So when we turned this around and said, okay, how about we tell you how little water you can apply and still get the yield that you're getting in the 90% yield, they said, oh, that would be amazing. And by the way, some parts of my field are getting too much water, some parts are getting too little water. Can you figure out like how to split it up? Dude, like that's solid gold. Like, yeah, where can I buy this? That's what you want to hear. Where can I buy this? How much is going to send me back? Right. So that's the kind of stuff you want to hear as a UX designer. And that is where we shine. This is exactly what we need to come in and do. We need to figure out, is the use case even valuable for these customers? And then how to make it, tie it all together. We're the glue, right? We're the super glue between data science, business, customer, technology. We put it all together and we make it pretty on top of it. Forget I said that last part.
We have about two. No, that was good. We have about 2 minutes. So let me just give you one more question here. I was at a conference last week, says Matthew, and one of the topics was ensuring brands were building humanity and empathy into their AI agents. However, what about the consumers also using AI agents? Does one AI agent need humanity and empathy towards another AI agent? What do we need to consider when designing AI agents that converse with other AI agents?
Yeah, we do. We absolutely idea they're creating this framework. Yeah, next stop is is Terminator. Yes, for sure. Yeah, I think that these are all great considerations, and I wouldn't make sort of ethics a gateway. I would make it a conversation. I would make it questions. And one of the best frameworks I've seen is Paul's Humanifesto. So it's aihumanifesto.org or .com, or can you send them there? So those are that's a great framework. It lays out all the things that I cannot cover in 2 minutes. So check it out. So Paul put that in the chat or whatever. So Paul also has a perspective in our book, and there's a bunch of perspectives on exactly this on ethics and how we can get involved with various ethics frameworks, because it is super critical. The more we get into the weeds on this stuff, the more critical it becomes. And the next 4 years are really going to determine what the next 100 years for humanity, I think, are going to look like. That $500 billion investment is going to make an AGI, and then we'll see what happens. So we need to get involved. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, just get involved however you can. Learn everything you can. Be active.
Well, speaking of that, Greg, we're out of time today. I am going to ask people to check back into the LinkedIn group, AI plus UX. We're going to put some information, Greg's recording from this session. We're going to put a link to his book. We're going to put a link to his newsletter as well. So Greg, I really appreciate all the effort that you're making to help people understand how to use these tools. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody. See you next Friday.